Kat, great to have you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, my first question is just how are you? Because we all saw that clip of ICE assaulting you, throwing you to the ground. So tell us what happened there and what you've been seeing in general.
Yeah, so every Friday morning, I've been protesting at the Broadview Processing Center, which is where ICE headquarters its operations in the Chicago area. ICE is conducting Operation Midway Blitz, which is a completely bullshit term used to justify rounding up hundreds, if not thousands, of people. The Trump administration has admitted they've only found 10 people with criminal backgrounds, and that's if we're taking them at their word.
Right.
What I have seen is consistent one-sided violence and one-sided escalation by ICE. So I went there for a vigil earlier this summer, and it was pretty uneventful. We were out there, praying and talking about what's been happening in that center. It's a 12-hour, you're only supposed to be held for 12 hours at a time because it's a processing center. But people are being kept for days or weeks at a time without hot meals or beds or access to hygienic facilities. There have been reports of dozens of men in a single cell, of pregnant women and grandmothers sleeping on concrete floors. One morning I watched as people were marched into vans in the same clothes they were detained in, and we have no idea how long they were in there. But when I came in July, it just looked like a nondescript building. And then there has been a vigil there every Friday morning for almost 20 years. And as ICE has escalated its brutality, protesters have joined. So about 2 months ago now, 6 activists joined this vigil and were arrested when they sat in front of the ICE driveway as a van tried to pull out. And every week since then, I and many others have been attending these protests. When I returned, the windows were covered with plywood. We have no idea what is happening in that facility. They won't let elected officials go and investigate it or inspect it as they're allowed to by law.
Which is illegal, by the way.
Which is illegal. So that video that you saw of me being thrown to the ground, I think that was week 3 or 4 of these protests that I've been attending. That was actually the 3rd time that ICE has thrown me. That was the 3rd time in 7 days that they had thrown me. They love dragging my friend and throwing me because they're big, strong men who are terrified of a 110-pound, 5-foot woman who's unarmed, by the way. I have been to a lot of protests, some that have been more intense than others, some where chemical weapons like tear gas have been used. I and everyone I have spoken to that have similar pasts have never seen anything like this. We have been tear gassed at least a dozen times, and that's just like in the morning. I've been shot with pepper balls to the point that like my legs are covered in bruises. The day that I was thrown to the ground in that video, I had to play tug of war with a man's body from keeping him from being abducted into the facility. A van tried to drive through us, and as people blocked it because it was holding a protester that was unlawfully detained and marched out in chains after they told us they would release that protester. And we said, no, like this is illegal. They shot a man in the face with a pepper ball. They shot Rev Kev. You might have seen that priest getting shot in the head. That's also an instance. He has faced tons of brutality by ICE, and that is just one video. I have watched as they shot rubber bullets with snipers at us, breaking a window of a local business. They shattered a guitar because we come armed with chants and signs and songs. I bring my knitting. These are men in full military gear that are terrified by people singing, "We shall not be moved." It's pathetic. 2 Fridays ago, we held a press conference, myself, some activists that have been, we've been together since this kind of started, and some local elected officials, and demanded transparency to allow elected officials to inspect this facility, accountability for ICE agents who have broken the law, because we have no idea who these men are. Ostensibly, they could just be random guys that were like, I'm going to go to the Army surplus store, get this gear, and then go brutalize some people. And for this fence that ICE erected about 24 hours after that video that you're referencing happened, that's unlawful. It's a fire hazard. The Village of Broadview has ordered that it come down, and it endangers the lives of protesters, of press, of families trying to find their loved ones. And the first week I was there were no elected officials or even candidates, besides me, but I was there in my personal capacity. Each week we have had more and more. Last week, Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin came. And then yesterday, that fence was removed, which is a huge win. And now we're pushing for transparency.
So
Unbelievable.
here is just I limited myself to just the past month, and this is not even everything, but here's what ICE has been up to. They assaulted an 84-year-old married couple. I'm not sure if that was Chicago or Portland, but they assaulted an 84-year-old married couple. And there's pictures of, the wife.
To be fair, was that 84-year-old married couple scary?
She was bleeding from the head. You saw the blood on the shirt. It was really
Were they armed
disgusting.
with a guitar, for example?
They were an imminent threat against the ICE agents, yes. They, like you said, shot a priest in the face with a pepper ball, tear gassed a baby, ran over people with cars, tear gassed journalists, tear gassed cops, zip tied naked kids who were U.S. citizens and threw them in a U-Haul van, deported a guy for having cologne and said it was drugs. They deported a guy who was wrongfully imprisoned for 40 years. He got out and they kicked him out of the country. And they tackled a 79-year-old car wash owner and hospitalized him. I limited myself. American citizen.
Yeah.
I limited myself to like not even. This isn't even a month. This is maybe like 3 weeks or something like that. What are we supposed to do with this, Kat? Like, when I look at this, I think the abolish ICE people are the most vindicated people on the planet.
100%. I mean, this country wasn't founded with ICE. ICE is a pretty new development. This has only existed since 2002 and is being used as a secret police. Like, any immigration policy cannot go forward with what ICE is. If we want to create new policies, if we want to end this reign of terror, we have to abolish ICE, but not just abolish ICE, hold these men accountable. We need trials. Graham Plattner said that these men need to be marched to the Senate and unmasked.
Yeah.
People have asked me if I would sue the agents who have brutalized me, which, by the way, every time they grab me, it must be a coincidence, but they don't do it to any of the guys there. They grab me by my chest. Like, what the hell are we doing here?
Jesus.
They need to be unmasked and held accountable. But here's the thing, it can't just be strongly worded letters. When I hear the rhetoric coming out of this administration, when I see the actions being taken by this administration, I worry that so many of our leaders are not going to truly stand with the people. There need to be consequences. That's why I was so excited. I'm not even sure if excited is the right word, but hopeful, I guess, to see that fence torn down, because once it was erected, a bunch of concrete barriers were created for a free speech zone. It's accommodating what ICE is doing. ICE put up an unlawful fence, and then we had a free speech zone, which its existence implies that everywhere else is a non-free speech zone. Why are we being punished for exercising our First Amendment rights? I said this at that press conference, but it is ICE's responsibility to respect and uphold our constitutional rights. It is not our job to accommodate their brutality. And I wish we had more leaders that felt that way.
And so have you thought about pressing charges? I mean, how would that even work if you don't even exactly know who is brutalizing you?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should. I said this before, but Trump gave ICE over $100 billion with his big bullshit bill that he passed. And I want to make it so that the majority of that money is paid out in civil lawsuits to people who are getting assaulted, because they're getting assaulted all across this country. So
and here's the thing, is that video resonated with a lot of people, I think, because small blonde woman gets tackled by ICE, which is awful. Don't get me wrong. But it does not hold a candle to what the people in that facility are going through. And it's the reason so many of us return week after week, because we are there to shed light on and pressure our leaders on the horrors that are happening in that facility. We don't know the full extent of their crimes just in that little block. And I really encourage people, if you are horrified by what they will do to me in front of press, in front of dozens of people holding cameras, imagine what they are doing behind boarded up windows.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. What is the, obviously we're not in Chicago, so we just see these videos, we see the protests, we see them, ramming vehicles and just completely lying about what's going on. By the way, we see the images of an apartment building raided in the middle of the night with freaking Black Hawk helicopters. What is the atmosphere actually like in the city? Like, do these feel like little one-off isolated incidents, or is the whole city gripped by this sense of like impending doom and terror?
I mean, there's definitely fear in the air, but even more than that, there's defiance. So this is the only city where Donald Trump has had to cancel a rally because he got scared of protesters. Like, Tom Homan hates us because we know our rights. That is an actual quote. In my neighborhood, Rogers Park, people have been patrolling the streets. When we hear about ICE, we hold them accountable. They abducted 2 men on the corner where my campaign office is. And the next day, 400 people showed up to sign up for school watches, to get involved with Protect RP, which does a lot of these patrols, to get whistles. Actually, we had a bunch of volunteers 3D print hundreds of whistles to put in our office, and we just give them out for free. And we had like a little party where you can bead them and make them yours. And that's the type of community that I am so proud to be a part of. One time at like 11 o'clock, my partner and I saw a bunch of unfamiliar trucks on the street. So we went downstairs, like in our jammies, went on the street just to check what was up. And if it's ICE, we'll scream. 8 different people came down too at like 11 o'clock. And it turns out it was just guys working for the city that were fixing our water lines. And they were like, we're glad that you came down. Like, it's cool that so many people came down to do that. But that is the type of city Chicago is. Like, Donald Trump has started a fight with a city that isn't going to back down. And it's put all of us in a really precarious position. Conservatives love to pretend like cities are these hellholes where, like, dens of sin. No, we just have public transit. We just have more community than a security system and a Ring camera on every door of our house. We can walk to the grocery store. We know who our neighbors are, and we stand up for them.
So let me ask you this, Kat. A couple big stories came out the past few days. Trump basically admitted that Stephen Miller is a Nazi in so many words. He said if Stephen Miller had his way, there'd be 100 million people in this country, not 300 million. And he said, Stephen, why don't you come up here and tell your true feelings, but not your truest feelings, because those might go a little too far. So we have that moment. And at the same time, we also have this young Republicans group chat that was leaked by Politico. And long story short, they seem to be very fond of this guy named Hitler. What's your reaction to all this stuff coming out on the right now?
We saw this also with Elon Musk's little army of teenage incels when we found out that some of them were saying overtly like pro-Hitler and pro-Holocaust statements. And it's this idea that like, well, we should let them grow and change. They're just little boys. No, these are grown men. These are like lawyers that have a job. They should not, like, there should be consequences for that. And the consequences are everyone knows that you're a Nazi. My job before this for, my entire adult career has been covering the far right. And Stephen Miller is very much a part of that. So none of this is surprising to me, but part of why I'm running for Congress is because so many of our leaders don't seem to grasp the moment we're in, don't seem to understand or have literacy of far right narratives and conspiracy theories. Which is important because it drives the entire Republican Party right now. And Stephen Miller is the architect of so many of them. None of this is surprising to me. And so, like, part of why I ran is I and other disinformation reporters, we have been used as a dry run for what is happening to the federal government. I mean, I lost my job because Elon Musk sued the nonprofit I worked at for accurate reporting. But we volunteered to study and be attacked by these psychos. 350 million people did not decide to do that. They did not volunteer for that, and they're being subjected to them anyway.
What is the vibe from cops in Chicago? Because I've seen multiple videos of them getting tear gassed. And like, if your job is to try to preserve some sense of law and order in the city, the federal agents, and unfortunately it's not just ICE, like all these different federal agents surging in, creating chaos, running into random cars, shooting someone on the street. Like, that's not exactly creating a safe and stable environment. So what's your sense of like how they're feeling? Because on the other hand, like, most of them are right wing and, probably broadly supportive of Trump. So have you gotten a vibe from them about their thoughts on what's going on in Chicago?
So in Chicago proper, our mayor has done a lot to make sure that there is the least amount of collaboration with ICE as possible. So ICE is not allowed to conduct raids on public property. We have sanctuary status here, so the police are not supposed to be helping or aiding ICE in its actions at all. But in the village of Broadview, where the Broadview Processing Center is, specifically for that reason. The police have watched as we're assaulted. So like the first week I came, they were there kind of, just watching everything, protecting our rights. The second week I was there, they stood in front of the ICE facility and made sure that we couldn't get proper video of a van coming in with people slamming on the doors trying to get out. It was so loud you could see the doors of the van moving, and these are like sliding doors too. They stood there and watched as I shoved us back. They did nothing. And then the third week, the week of that video we referenced at the top of this show, they didn't even show up. There wasn't even the pretense that they wanted to defend us, that our lives mattered. And then the week after, once the fence was put up and we had to go to this much more dangerous entrance, the other entrance that you come in, Broadview officers watched as a van tried to drive through us about the length of a football field. And I remember going up to one of them and going, "You just let a van drive through us." And he looked at me and goes, "No, I didn't." Bro, we were both there. This happened 5 seconds ago.
Oh my God.
Who do you serve? Who do you protect?
Yeah.
ICE thugs, apparently.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's some cops around the country who are calling ICE out and did press conferences basically saying you're the criminal, stop committing the crimes. But to your point, there's also plenty who are sort of the same, sympathetic and this sort of similar ideologically, and they're willing to, I mean, they themselves would probably sign up for it,
Sure.
Let me ask you this, Kat. So this story just came out in the Wall Street Journal. The Trump administration is preparing sweeping changes at the IRS that would allow the agency to pursue criminal inquiries of left-leaning groups more easily. So, like, literal targeting of people who disagree with them. When you see stuff like this, are you concerned about like Media Matters where you used to work, or even just groups like Indivisible and Move On and the people who are organizing the No Kings protests? We have Mike Johnson out there saying that it's like they're a Hamas-supporting anti-America hate rally, and I think Tom Emmer said they were like a terrorist rally or some shit. This is getting super dangerous with the rhetoric where they're making it, honestly, it seems like they're trying to criminalize any and all dissent.
Yeah, we're not sliding into authoritarianism. We're there. We are there. This is what I have devoted my life to studying and calling out. We have been sliding into it, but we are there now. And like the thing that's really scary is, for example, my former employer, Media Matters, a lot of our work is literally just posting what these people say. Like when I launched my campaign, Jesse Waters complained. He was like, "Kat was trying to get me fired for things I said." And it was like, I was just posting your words with a direct transcript. And that is now hate speech or Antifa terrorism or whatever else you want to call it. I mean, it's the same thing with Jimmy Kimmel when he almost got taken off the air for just showing Trump's own words. This is what dictators do.
Yep.
And they are trying to normalize this type of action. So come election day, we will be more comfortable with more authoritarian actions. I'm very, very concerned about Trump invoking the Insurrection Act. This would have our own troops pitted against American people. And there are pretty much two options we have here, which is escalation by state forces, whether that's the state National Guard or state police, which, creates a constitutional crisis. It creates a constitutional crisis that could escalate into something much worse. Or troops are allowed to terrorize civilians. And even if they don't shoot anyone, it is that normalization that gets you to the point where you're comfortable with men with guns being at the ballot box. That's one of the things that I've tried to stress to Democrats, even before I ran for office, is you need to be speaking out against this, because otherwise your constituents are going to wonder if they're the crazy ones, if this is actually normal. It is not normal. It is not normal at all. And we can't pretend like it is. And the fact that so many of us have tried to accommodate it and be like, well, we'll get them next time in 2028 is part of the reason I am running for Congress.
Yeah. It's obvious at this point they're trying to provoke confrontations because they want to use that as a pretext to invoke the Insurrection Act. Not that they needed any pretext. They just, do whatever they want anyway. But they liked, they seized on the big balls mugging in order to justify National Guard in D.C. They seized on the L.A. protest as a justification for the National Guard there as well. And so some of the commentary I see online is like, make sure you don't give them anything that they can work with. And I understand that impulse, but I also worry about it veering into encouraging people just to acquiesce, because effectively what they're trying to create is a situation where like they can do anything up to including murder, by the way, and you just have to take it. Like, we can stormtrooper into your neighborhood. We can raid an apartment building in the middle of the night with Black Hawk helicopters, snatch kids naked out of their beds, zip tie them together. We can break the ribs of a 79-year-old business owner. We can throw, tiny blonde chick on the ground, or that that horrible video of the woman whose husband was being deported. And ICE agent throws her to the ground with her hair. Like, we can do all of that. And if you respond, then you're the problem, and you're giving us even more justification to go even further.
Hey guys, sign up on Substack below to get the full interview with Kat Abughazaleh. You don't want to miss it, and definitely also support her campaign.